Hey, this is Sarah Moffat. I'm a leadership coach, and this is your bi-weekly reminder to go for it. I'm here to help you gain the confidence, consistency, and courage you need to go for it, whatever it is. This is a podcast produced by Cybrary, a company that is all about going for it. They've revolutionized the cybersecurity education experience, and I'm excited to hang out with you and Cybrary today. All right, y'all, it's Monday. It's time to stand up, get yourself together, and let's go for it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Go For It with Sarah Moffat. I'm so psyched to be with Jonathan Alboum today. Jonathan is amazing, and he's going to tell us some great stories. He is currently the federal CTO of ServiceNow, and he's formerly the CIO of USDA. Welcome, Jonathan.
Well, Sarah, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you. We know a million of the same people. Mm-hmm. And so this is actually our first time getting to have any conversation. So this is going to be great. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got to be where you are?
Sure. When I think about how I ended up at ServiceNow in this CTO position, I never could have predicted that this is where I would be when I started my career out of college. Wow. I would love to say that I had a grand plan, but I didn't. I ended up, I went to the University of Virginia and I studied systems engineering. And when I finished my college education, I did what most of my peers did. We got jobs in consulting, and I worked at Price Waterhouse and learned a lot about doing professional services and working on projects. And I stayed there for a while. Ended up at a small business, a company called Ventera Corporation for a bit. And while I was at Ventera, I worked on a project for the USDA Food and Nutrition Service around the food stamp program. Now it's called SNAP. At the time, it was food stamps. And I got to know the program and some of the people involved, and really, really liked it. But I didn't think much more of it than there'll be another project. But as that project progressed, and it was a challenge project for a while, and we were able to turn it around. We had a great team. I had a inquiry by the person who was the chief information officer about whether or not I'd have any interest in joining the government and becoming a deputy CIO in the agency to maybe continue to develop some of the work that we were doing and improve the organization. I was really flattered that he said he was posting this position and thought I should apply. But I had no intention of ever joining the government, right? I was just, wow, what an interesting opportunity. So I took it. I applied, and I was successful, and I became the deputy CIO at Food and Nutrition. And, eventually that led to the CIO position. And I was at Food and Nutrition Service as the deputy CIO, then the CIO for 5 years as a Fed. And that, eventually led me to look at an opportunity at the General Services Administration. And I knew some people there. It sounded interesting and bigger and more complicated. And I thought, well, that's the right next step, for me, this more challenging kind of environment. But one of the things that I found was that GSA, while certainly very different than Food and Nutrition Service at USDA, and the budgets were bigger, but we were having all the same kinds of challenges and the same kinds of debates inside the agency. But instead of talking about a $500,000 project, it might be a $5 million project. And it was all the same kinds of things. I had learned all these great things about, running an IT organization, managing in the government while I was at FNS. And, it was sort of, dawned on me that if I had a chance to return to USDA at some point, because I felt really close to the mission, I'd want to. And, eventually, I had a unique opportunity to return to USDA and work for the Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary Vilsack, who happens to have returned as the secretary in this administration. And I worked for him on a very important project to him and trying to figure out the right way to use this technology for the best outcomes at the agency. And, I gave him some recommendations and some advice, which he which he took, and we became, we worked pretty closely together. And he appointed me to become the chief information officer for USDA. But it was all these different steps along the way that it seemed like they make sense now, but there was some good luck in there to have those opportunities. But at the same time, it's the Go For It podcast. There were times where I take a leap, and like when I decided to join the government, a lot of people looked at me and said, "Why would you join the government? You're doing really well at this company, and you have a nice path forward here. But if you join the government, it's going to be hard, and this, that. You have to learn all these new things." Well, that was a hard decision to make, but it was the right decision for me. And in retrospect, I learned so much working in the government over 11 years. And when I was working for for the secretary, after I returned to USDA, I remember I had to give him some some recommendations, and I wasn't sure if I should what I should recommend. But I went with what I thought were the right things for the agency and for the taxpayers, for the farmers and ranchers that we served. And, it was in kind of another go for it moment. So this is the right thing to do. I'm going to put it down on paper, even if it, is hard to do. And I think that when you do a thing like that and it works out, those go for it moments give you a good opportunity. And I'm sure in retrospect, that was a very important moment in my career, because it set me up to be a real leader at the department. Eventually, became the chief information officer, working for Secretary Vilsack, and that was a springboard into all these kinds of opportunities that I had when I left government, including coming to ServiceNow.
It's so cool. I when you take risks like that, and I think anytime you take a risk, you're telling yourself that you believe in yourself, and it builds confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So that when somebody asks you a question, you've just got this little bit of extra boost that sets you apart. Honestly, that's the kind of thing that sets you apart. But I wanted to know, you have had a lot of success in your career. So you're talking about, okay, you graduated from college, you went to PwC, then you went to Venterra, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What was it, do you think, about you or about your character or your work ethic or your skill set that made them look at you and say, "Hey, you want to be the deputy CIO?" Like, how would you characterize what it was about you, and how would you role model that to somebody else?
Well, I think when you're looking at positions in the federal government, it's being able to align to the mission of the agency is really important. And the period of time that I worked as a at Venterra in these projects for the Food and Nutrition Service, and you get to see the impact that SNAP program has. It was something that became very meaningful to me. And when I remember when I was talking to people about this job and becoming a Fed, I talked a lot about the mission and the fact that in my family we have a history of public service. My father was a social worker. My mom was a teacher, brother and sister who are also teachers. And the idea that serving the public is very important in my family and to me personally. And this was a way to do it in a where I could, connect back to a mission that was meaningful. The Food and Nutrition Service has a long mission statement. We like to say, F&S helps needy people eat better. And that's such a noble mission. And the idea that I could be a part of that, was inspiring and empowering to me. And it's one of the reasons why I felt like I should take this chance and, move from the private sector into government. And being so closely tied to a mission like that has, I think, a big impact on how you do your work. And one of the things when I eventually became the CIO for USDA, and even when I was at this F&S CIO, it was making sure that we could connect the work we were doing in IT to the mission outcomes. It was always really important to me. The idea that you do your work and it's IT for the sake of IT, or I'm just building a server, or I'm just fixing a computer, or building a system. That misses, I think, the most essential part of the federal employment and the federal IT communities, that IT is there because we have government programs that need it. We have citizens we serve, whether it's federal, state, or local government. That person at the end of the benefit, the public relies on government to do certain things for it. And when you can use technology to make those digital citizen services more effective, when you can help a public sector employee be more effective at their job because you've given them modern technology or a new way of doing business, or you've created, you've given them data they need to make better decisions. Well, you've done something that has a much bigger impact than you can imagine. And seeing, the mission in action, going out into the field and, visiting a food bank like we would do at Food and Nutrition. Or, when I was the USDA CIO, you visit a chicken processing plant. The Food Safety Inspection Service oversees these things, and understand what the people in the field are doing and how does technology support that. Travel to a farm and talk to a farmer, how they interact with USDA and how they're trying to run a business. And that mission is just so comprehensive. It touches the lives of all Americans. And, USDA is involved in almost every aspect of the domestic economy. It's so comprehensive. There's almost nowhere to turn. You can't see some aspect of USDA. Yeah. When you think about the work we do in technology as part of that, I always felt that was really inspiring, and I always try and talk about that and encourage people to see the mission in action, get out of the office to the extent they can, and get some more perspective. And, when I'm, talking to my colleagues today at ServiceNow, we talk all the time about the mission of the agencies that we serve. And the reality is that when we go into a conversation and we talk about IT, or we talk about HR, or we talk about these technical administrative issues, if you just talk about them, it sounds good, and we're very knowledgeable, and the software can do all these great things. But when you connect those great things to that mission outcome that can be improved, or serving a citizen, or serving a member of the public, and getting them a benefit they need, or getting them help in a critical time, that's the difference. And that changes the kind of conversation from I'm a vendor to the government to I'm a partner and advisor, and we can have a real conversation about how together, we really fulfill a mission that's really vital to the United States of America.
That's inspiring to me, and it shows how important it is. I mean, probably half of the world has read Simon Sinek's Why. Start with why. But so you have that, right? You understand I'm here not just to program this thing, not just to, harden the security of whatever, not there's no just in there. Like, you're here to serve the greater mission. And I think that's something that anybody can do at any level. They can do that to inspire their teams, to inspire themselves. So super important, right? That no wonder they look to you.
And I think it's an important part of recruiting in the federal government too.
Yeah.
We need to bring in people into the federal space who, have diverse experiences and backgrounds. And sometimes, maybe in the technology space, it's not as interesting as going to work at a technology company. But when you position it as you're serving the public, you have a mission behind you, like helping needy people eat better, or educating children, or serving a veteran. Yeah. Pick your curing cancer. Pick your mission that's important to you. Now your work is elevated, and I truly believe that there's there's such a value around that fulfillment, that self-actualization. I'm doing the work that I like to do, and I'm doing it for this reason, that yes. Sometimes that overcomes overcomes money or some other kind of status or something, because you're doing something bigger than yourself. And I think it's the most important recruiting tool that we have in the federal government.
It is. And for people who are starting out their careers, you're not going to get a big flashy job. You're not going to get to take those trips out to, wherever to see. So you really have to motivate yourself. You really have to wake up in the morning and tell yourself, like, I'm going to go do this job. I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities. I'm going to do it because at the end of the day, it's going to serve a greater mission. It's going to allow me to, connect with people. whatever it is, but it's really important to know why you're going to go do what you're going to do. Did you have, I mean, you talked about your mom being a teacher and your dad doing social work. Like, did you have other role models in your technical career that you think made a difference and helped you achieve the success that you had?
Well, when I can remember being on my first project at Pricewaterhouse, and it was a Visual Basic project for an insurance company. And I was taking all these Visual Basic courses, and I remember telling one of the managers, "I'm going to be the best Visual Basic developer in the world." And she looked at me, it's like, um, "That's maybe not how you want to focus." There's like lots of other technologies that either are more important, and guess what? And then over time there'll be other ones we don't even know about yet. What you want to be focused on is thinking about data and thinking about business processes, and how do we make this organization work better. And whatever the technology is, that'll change. But if you focus on data and you focus on business processes, you'll always be a really valuable person on a project. This is early on in my career. It was very important that I kind of heard those things, because it gave me a bigger perspective. And as opposed to those first I think it was at Pricewaterhouse for about 5 years out of college. At that time, you can try and specialize in a product or something like that. But I was more about the data and the business process, understanding how it all worked together, and how does that data flow between organizations and across them. And a lot of what we do now at ServiceNow is think about how the data and the work flow, and how do we improve how the data and work flow inside an organization. So these things that I learned 25 or 6 years ago, which seems like so long ago, are things that are still really important. And ServiceNow didn't exist. Lots of the technologies that we rely on today didn't exist. And but what this manager told me is still super valuable advice that I give all the time when I speak to people.
It's so smart. When I think about, I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast or watch this podcast might be early or mid-career. And I wonder if anybody's ever told them things like, hey, if you go into your next role or your role today with the mindset of not just the problem you're solving today, or not just the technology you're working on, but number one, figuring out how what you do serves the greater mission. Number two, figuring out how what you're doing is impacting how data flows, and learning those business processes, it opens up a whole world of possibility to someone. Otherwise, you're just kind of like Dilbert in your own little cubicle doing your own little thing, versus having this worldview of how things work. And that, I think that's something that really sets you apart. And that's great advice.
Right. And a lot of it goes to having being in a mission-driven organization, and making the mission part of the way you do your work and why you do your work, like you said earlier. Yeah. And at ServiceNow, we talk about we have a purpose, and our purpose is to make the world of work better for people. And that's a great vision. And I when I talk to people about what we do at ServiceNow in from a government capacity, I like to say that we make the world of government work better for public sector employees and the people they serve. I want someone who is working in a government agency to have the best experience using technology to drive that mission outcome, and to make sure that they can serve the people who are their customers, which might be a member of the public, it might be another government agency, in the best way possible. And when those things are working, and we can make the administrative parts of our jobs less complex, we can really be focused on the mission, and we can be really focused on the outcomes. I come back to those concepts as motivators for the people we work with in the government, and our teams as ideally ways to think about their work that gives it more meaning, and helps them be more connected to the people they serve.
Yeah, it's so smart. And I don't know that I've even ever thought about it. Like, I remember several years ago when I was working at HHS, I remember thinking that we needed to do a better job in the CIO shop of helping people in the security operations center, whatever, understand, how what we were doing was impacting the American people, because it's so far removed when you get to like the headquarters level and stuff like that. And you're saying all the things.
Right. It is far removed. And I think we should acknowledge that. And it takes some thinking to make these connections. But when you do, it's really valuable and it's really powerful. I think that is one of the hardest jobs of any leader in the federal government, to make those connections. And when you're in an administrative service like IT or HR or facilities, contracting, and see, you're even a step or two removed.
Right.
And when you work at a place like a GSA, which is serving all of the agencies, you're even another level or two removed.
Yeah.
But those connections are there. And the more we talk about them and understand them, the more meaningful our work becomes. And when people have find meaning in their work, they're more engaged. And when they're more engaged, they do a better job. And, we work with the government as an industry serving the government, or as federal employees, state, local employees, and we're, more engaged serving the public. We're making the world a better place. I realize that sounds, it might sound naive or silly to some, but I really believe that. It takes a lot of people doing lots of little good things all the time to drive an improvement. Things don't just magically change and all get better. It's incremental. That's my belief, is that, life, work life, personal life, all these things, they improve little by little. But it takes lots of good steps and good actions to do that. It's like trust. You build it in, drops, over time, but you can lose it very quickly, but you build it slowly. I think that's the same thing about creating, big, good, strong organizations and good, trust in government. Think about it that way. You build trust in government over many years of positive actions and experiences and customer experiences, but you could lose it very quickly as soon as, you have a bad experience, or you're not treated well by a program or something like that. You can suddenly think it's all bad. So it takes everybody kind of rowing in that same direction to make it work at all levels of government, and people who work for the government, people who work for companies that serve the government.
You're exactly right. I mean, I wholly agree with you. And, like, as I'm thinking about your story and what you've shared, it seems to me like you have made some really intentional choices. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to go in here and see what happens. It's, what, I'm going to intentionally stop looking myopically at Visual Basic. Is that what you said? Or something? Like I'm not going to focus on this thing, right? I'm going to take this, I'm going to intentionally look at the business processes. I'm going to intentionally work with my staff as a leader to share the mission.
Right. But, I got advice to do those things, and I followed the advice, right? Sometimes you have this great idea on your own, but I think oftentimes these ideas and directions I've gotten and followed through on because someone recommended it, or somebody I worked with and trusted, somebody who had, wisdom, they were more experienced than me, and I listened. And, that to me, that has made a big difference. Having, good people around me who have been thankfully invested in my success and took time to share their perspective with me and give me some ideas and advice. And, I try and do the same with others.
So we talked before we started recording about the TED Talk that I did, which was modern mentoring, how to create your own roundtable as legendary as King Arthur's. And to your point, it's like, it's about being intentional about who you surround yourself with, about seeking out advice from people who have been where you want to be, finding those role models, and also being open, because advice comes, when I went back to college, it was just like a fluke. Like somebody was like, hey, if you do this, this will happen. I'm like, oh, all right, I'm going to go do it. Right. So, just being open to those possibilities, being willing to go for it, take those things. So I want to ask you one last question. This is the big one that I really want to know, which is looking at you from 25 years, right? So you said it's been 25, 27 years. So you're looking at you 25 years ago. What would you today tell you then that you think would have been a game changer?
Slow down. I got the advice to slow down from different people over time. And I think slowing down and taking a strategic pause every so often is a really
Mm.
powerful thing. I think it's the idea of changing from reacting to something to being able to respond to something. And that slowing down could be as simple as pausing and taking a deep breath, maybe 2 deep breaths, and then, engaging, not slamming out an email in response to something so quickly.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that, I always do what I, always do that. I try and do that all the time. And most of the time I do, but, I think I'm wired in some ways to try and go fast. And, when you go too fast, you create blind spots, and there are things that'll knock you down you don't even see coming. And, when you slow down, you have an opportunity to think about it. And when I say slow down, I don't mean go slow. What I mean is pause and think about what you're doing. Maybe ask some questions or get some advice.
Yeah.
Recognize that something doesn't have to be done today; it can be done tomorrow. It gives you a little bit of time and space to think about it. The younger Jonathan, and when I say younger, I mean like 3 years ago, younger even, times would be rushing, and in that rushing, you can make mistakes, you can miss opportunities, you could be setting yourself back, even if you think you're getting an extra thing done and you'll be ahead. Well, maybe you didn't do it right, maybe you have to redo it. You see this with projects, you see this with organizations. There is a value in the concept of a strategic pause, personally and professionally, organizationally, and in your personal life and your family life, so on and so forth. That advice, I think, is served me very well. I have to remember to do it. It's not my natural inclination, but when I'm, really present and I'm really, thinking about my work and I'm thinking about the world around me, and I can remember to breathe. I get a lot of that from yoga. I like to practice yoga, and that's made a big difference in my life, physically, personally, professionally. I think when I can, fall back on my breath and, just collect myself, and then do whatever the thing is that I have to do, whatever that is. It could be a work thing, it could be a home thing. I do it better, and I do it with more intention, to your point. And sometimes I might not do this thing that I thought I had to do because I really thought about it. There's a book that I refer to sometimes, probably another one a lot of people have read, by Marshall Goldsmith, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And,
yes, I'm reading it right now. That's so funny.
So there is one of the many things he talks about in there is asking yourself the question, is it worth it? Is it worth it to have this conversation with this person right now? Is it worth it to send this email right now? Is it worth it to make this organizational change, or, to be really firm on this particular issue? And the answer is, maybe, which, goes back to my consulting days, maybe, or it depends. So it might be, but, I take from that, taking that strategic pause, thinking about that question, is it worth it? And making a decision. It doesn't mean no, but it means that you should ask the question and decide, as opposed to just doing it. That's the pause, that's the slow down part that I think is really powerful. I think of it as a real superpower, and I am confident that my that Jonathan Alboum is a better person because of this, pausing, slow down, being reminded to do it. Even when I don't, I'm like, oh, I should have, and I'll do it better next time.
Oh man, that is I think the best advice. A great ending for this amazing podcast. Listen, everybody's going to want to come and work for you. Everybody's going to just be so excited. This has been a thrill. Thank you so much for being on the show and for sharing your wisdom and your story. I really appreciate it. You're amazing.
Oh, Sarah, thank you. It was a great opportunity. I've enjoyed our conversation, and I hope we get to do it again sometime.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. All right. Thanks everybody for listening, and I will see you next time.